Baldur's Gate 3 still has more secrets, small details, and cool tricks you could be using. So again, let's list off a bunch of stuff you might not have known. Did you know that when you have Scratch the dog in camp, wild shaping or summoning a cat and meowing next to him will have Scratch howl back at you? Also, once you play fetch with Scratch, he can be summoned into the world to bark at chests and see through illusions. Not only can you ping the world normally by pressing Alt right-click, but you can also pin specific spots through the minimap on the upper right. When a fire is already started, you can increase the time it burns by adding more fuel onto it, such as grease, alcohol, or oil. But since spiderwebs are also burnable, they do the same trick and extend the burn timer. Steam clouds can be created by hitting a body of water with fire, and steam makes targets in it more vulnerable to cold and shock damage, while more resistant to fire damage. But did you know that the steam itself can be altered? If you then hit the steam cloud with electricity, it can turn into electrified steam. Barrels can be pretty hefty and cumbersome to throw, and they don't go very far even with high strength. But if stuffed into a backpack, barrels can be chucked much farther than normal. Doesn't make much sense, but hey, it works. When you think of weapons, you think of daggers, axes, flails, that sort of thing. But there's one secret weapon that's a lot more tasty, a salami. Or, even smarter, dual-wield salamis. Hey, sometimes enemies are weak to bludgeoning attacks, so don't underestimate it. Levers can be triggered in multiple ways, such as using familiars to hit switches instead, or just hitting them with a ranged attack works just as well. In the Party tab screen, remember that you don't always have to move items around to use it. Simply start on the character you want to use the item, then scroll to whoever's inventory you'd like to use it from, then just double-click, such as throwables or potions. In the very beginning of the game, there's a secret stash hidden down the hill from Astarion, if you're strong enough to lift the rock out of the way. On that note, always move around heavy rocks if you can, there's often treasure underneath. In camp, if you get the NPC Withers, he can have some interesting interactions. Unlike other members of the camp, he's immune to pretty much everything. And he has quite a few funny things to say to you while attacking him.
My accuracy would be lauded. Had it a purpose.
A couple small optimizations you can make for combat is every turn, before you end it, always remember to equip your main hand weapon, not your ranged weapon. This is because you can't opportunity strike with ranged weapons equipped, so always give yourself the opportunity for free damage when it arrives. Also, always set your reactions to ask. This is because you can then choose when to use your reactions when it's appropriate, such as if the enemy will be immune to your attack, or mostly because some reactions have limited uses and you don't want to waste them in certain situations. Did you know that in the Goblin camp, you can knock down these lanterns for fire damage, or knock over these statues to crush enemies? Did you know that the amount of damage a falling object can do when crushing enemies changes on how much it weighs? This is best abused by wild shaping into an owlbear, then using a spell to expand its size, then jumping off a cliff right onto an unsuspecting enemy's head. This gives From the Top Rope a whole new meaning. Have you tried switching characters mid-conversation? This can be used to have one party member strike up a conversation with an NPC, while another sneaks in from behind to pickpocket them. During your adventures, at one point or another, you're bound to get caked in mud, dirt, and splattered with blood. Of course, long resting cleans you of this filth, but also dousing yourself with any kind of water cleans this off as well. One thing to keep in mind is that ability points for the most part should be an even number. While this whole theory is fairly nuanced from Dungeons & Dragons, and exceptions like strength not being as stringent on this rule, or other ways to boost ability points, for the most part having an odd number ability score results in bonuses and skill checks being lower than just going for +1 more for that even number. Some players may have glossed over the fact that clothing color can be changed by simply double-clicking on any die, then dragging any armor piece over to combine. I just don't recommend doing it with any jewelry, it's completely pointless. While it's a little annoying to do constantly, a neat trick before important battles is to have off-party camp support casters. If you have teammates who you don't particularly like or don't use, instead level them up to gain spells or skills that cast until long rest and don't require concentration. By doing this, you cast the spell, then switch party members to your preferred teammate, then you have that nice buff without any spell slots expended from your main team. Pretty handy. And there you go, 20 more things that might help you through your journey in Baldur's Gate 3. If you have any other tips, let us know in the comments below. And for all things Baldur's Gate, keep it here on GameSpot.